Yeah, hello and welcome to this video. A video that I announced for 2 days already, and now I'm finally making it. I hope it will work out fine. Feel a bit better here with my neck pain, but let's see how this video turns out. The subject is how useful are older chess books, and the example that I'm using is, or the book that I'm looking at is a real classic. It's about the Candidates Tournament 1953 by David Bronstein. I always have problems with names that would never be pronounced correctly in English. Like David Bronstein sounds weird, but where is this book? I have the German version, really old one. This is one book that was published, not published. Is published the right word? I mean, the German version here is from 1991, so this book is close to 30 years old. And yeah, 1991, I bought it right when it was available, because it was a classic, and back then the first time it seems available in German language, if we read the intro here. Now, this is one of the most famous chess books of all, actually, and often cited as a favorite book of many players, or at least they acknowledge that they think it's a great book. And I think I also mentioned it once in my Perpetual Chess podcast interview that I did in early 2017. I think it was 17, I guess. Yeah. And back then I was mostly thinking about yeah, the memory that I had of the book when I was a kid. But honestly, those kind of books you usually have in your library, but you never look at them, really. Or you did when you got it, when in my case, when I was a kid, 1991, I was 17, but still pretty fresh in chess. I had maybe a rating of 1900 or maybe 2000, I don't know, something like that. And I really liked the book back then. But this is always a little bit of an influence of a book being a classic or being popular. You have a different idea about it if you know it's a classic. Now, how did I meet this book again? I actually did while doing an analysis, or analysis is strong. I didn't dig that deep, but I was looking at this game here, Oewe against Geller, from that Candidates Tournament 1953, and I was coming across this position while researching losses of world champions. So I did a chess-based filter. I had a video series once for the ICC where I looked at losses of world champions, and this is a loss. Oewe lost this game to Geller, and I came across this game and I found it very instructive. And after I looked at this on my own, I felt, why not check what Bronstein is saying about this in this book? And then I looked at the analysis of the game, and it was terribly bad. It was just a very bad chess analysis. I was like, this is weird. Why didn't he analyze this properly? And this made me question the quality of the analysis of the book. And I didn't really continue with this thought all that much. Got other things to do. But then a little bit later, I got the idea, okay, let's check another game. And then I did it together with a chess student, and the analysis was also bad, pretty bad. Like, what is that? So it's a bit odd, yeah, that it's perceived as such a great book when the analysis is really a bit strange at times. And I know this sounds odd, but I'm going to show you some examples. And the main point is that I don't actually think we shouldn't just look at this with a modern eye in terms of computers, because the engines will always prove you wrong. This was clearly written before we had any engines, so it is clear that there must be mistakes. It's absolutely clear. No matter how good a player you are, how much time you put into the computer will always show that you're overlooking something. But I still think that even without an engine, the analysis is a little bit strange at times. And we found mistakes in the book, like the student and I together, without having a look at the computer. The computer later confirmed that we were right about certain positions. And I will give you those two examples, and then I'm going to just randomly pick a game out of the book and see what I can do with it. Yeah, like without the engine, and see, okay, I feel like here should, let's just see what happens. It's a bit of an experiment. So first, let's have a look at the two examples and compare the commentary that Bronstein did with what is actually right. So the Uwe Geller game, we don't need to look at the whole game. I think the main point is starting here. Now, let's have a look at this position. That is on the board after move 42. Uwe has just played the move h3. And let's have a look at this position. We have a position here, material is equal. Both sides have 6 pawns. And yeah, queen, rook, minor piece. It's a materially equal position. Then let's have a look at the strategic features of the position. I think if you look at this a little bit more closely, you will probably recognize that if anybody is better, it's probably black. Black's position is a bit more compact. He has got the better pawn structure. White has in particular a very loose king side, like the pawn structure e2, f4, h3 looks a little bit odd. There are quite a number of weaknesses. Let's say e3, it's currently covered well, but this is weak, and it's all in the vicinity of the king. So white is a little bit weakened here. Black has nicely centralized pieces, and the bishop here on f6 is currently protecting the d4 pawn. I thought this was an interesting example here for my video series back then, because the plan now that Geller goes for is very nice. He goes king f7, and I will actually open up the book, of course, and see what Bronstein is saying about all this. And we join. Yeah, we join here. It's like he has a commentary for exactly this position. So king f7, and this is a German version, so I have to translate it now. What he's saying. So he says after adjournment. I mean, back then they adjourned the game on move 40 and could look at it at home. After adjournment, Geller changes the position, trying to destroy Uwe's fortress. Yeah, this is a good explanation. White has essentially some kind of fortress build up. He tries to just block everything. And he says the black king yeah, goes away and yeah, and he says now Uwe didn't really adjust to the new situation. He's playing two useless king moves. This is true. Going back and forth. And then he says it would have been better to bring the knight to the queen side immediately. And this is actually a really, really bad annotation, because the plan to bring the knight to the queen side is completely anti-positional, and very obviously so. The problem is, we see that in the game actually. White now brings the knight over to the queen side, and we see why I like the game. Black is nicely tucking away the king on the queen side, which is completely closed, and then he tries to open up on the king side, while the own king is safely positioned on this side of the board. So Uwe now brings the knight all the way to b6. And now the knight on b6 is completely misplaced. If you check this now, this is just completely wrong. The knight is offside, absolutely offside, and doesn't do anything. And on the other hand, now white is lacking a crucial defender on the king side. If you just stay on g2, from here, it's very difficult to make any headway with black. You should just stay, like over and over, just stay. And it's difficult for black to make any headway. Black is better anyway, but the defensive chances are much better if you have a knight actually defending instead of being completely off on b6. I think this is a weird way to annotate, because it's pretty clear that the knight is bad on b6. I just don't quite get this. But the worst part comes now, because this position, and I don't have the engine on, I'm just getting this from memory. The worst part comes here. This position is not very nice for white, because you see that now black is able to potentially attack f4 3 times. Yeah, all 3 pieces can attack the pawn, but the knight cannot defend it anymore. Yeah, the knight is on b6. So you have no opportunity to defend it. But still, if white is now staying put and doesn't do all that much, it's not so easy for black to win. Instead, he played f5. And this move isn't giving, there's no annotation to f5. It's just a move without any text to it or question mark or whatever. Yeah, f5, g takes, queen h6, and now the threat of queen c1 check connected with rook g8 wins the game immediately. This is a completely lost position now. So f5 is a double question mark move, and this is not annotated. It's just not annotated at all. And if you look at the whole text, there's no question mark given to any of white's moves. The key mistakes are not identified. Bringing the knight to b6 is just a bad plan. And f5 is basically a blunder. It blunders the game away. You can switch the engine on just to show some of the evaluations of the comp, but you don't really need the comp to find that out. So let's say here, yeah, the computer basically gives everything as equal, which is a bit harsh, because it is not so equal. Yeah, because black is the one to try, and it seems that white might hold this with precise play, but it's not a very fun experience. But it's clear that once the knight is on b6, white's position is worse, because this is just a piece that's doing nothing on b6. So this position is evaluated as -1. Yeah, I think we get this. Yeah, white's king is a little bit insecure, f4 is weak. But the thing is, even if you lose the pawn just like that, you're not losing immediately. But after f5 takes, queen h6, it's game over. The computer is immediately on -3, and if you give it more time, it will be even worse, I think. It's just the attack is unstoppable. And this is pretty easy to figure out. And I really wonder why this isn't mentioned. I mean, Bronstein was obviously a very strong player, and didn't he see that? I cannot believe it. I sometimes wonder what this is. Is this a lack of effort, lack of time in the production? I don't know. One thing I do know is this is impossible in a modern book. It's just impossible, those kind of mistakes, because the computer will immediately point them out, no matter how strong the author is actually. But he will identify some key moments in the game, and this, I think, just gives more insight. This commentary is essentially not very useful. It doesn't show why white lost, and this is the plan to bring the knight to b6 is anti-positional, and f5 is just a tactically, let's say, refutable blunder in a way. And it's not mentioned, and this is what I don't really get, and what I think is a problem with some older books. They are not critical enough. They don't really try to find out why somebody lost. Maybe out of courtesy, I don't know what the reasoning is, because I don't really think that Bronstein is not able to identify that. I mean, that would be a bit odd. This was the example that I was coming across some years ago. And then last week, we looked at, Student and I, we looked at another game from the same book. That is the next one, Starberg against Kotov. It's was a coincidence. It's from the same round, yeah, round 17. Let's have a look at this one. And here we looked at the whole game because we randomly picked it out of the book, because I mean, we wanted to look at something, a game that we didn't know before and beforehand, and this is what we came up with. So it was a randomly picked game, and after this game, I'm going to pick another game at random and see how the annotation holds up, and not only holds up against the engine, because as I mentioned, it's clear that the engine will find improvements. I'm just trying to improve myself on the book, and I think sometimes it's easy to do so. Okay, so let's have a look at this game. Starberg Kotov. We have an old Indian defense. And I'm going to give you Bronstein's annotation here. It says bishop e7. The king's Indian bishop should go to g7, and later it gets repositioned to that square. Yeah, it's true. I mean, the old Indian is a different opening to the king's Indian, but I think it's essentially not wrong that the bishop would be better on g7. So, and we have castles, queen c2, rook e8, b3. And he says, yeah, this is not a great development. It would be better to play rook d1 and maybe later put the bishop to h3. I'm abbreviating this a little bit, and it's the translation is kind of an effort here. So I think he's right. Yeah, bishop to b2 is not the best way to develop, but okay, it's not a big deal. Let's say black plays bishop f8, bishop b2. And now the next moves by black are not annotated. I find this a bit curious, because I think it would deserve something to annotate. Black now played knight h5, a move that I was really, like, what, really? Knight to h5, what's the deal? It's probably not so bad, actually. Yeah, the bishop is now on b2, and the knight might jump to f4. Okay, but it's not annotated at all. White now played g3. Yeah, that is a pretty normal move that you can play here, just stopping any knight f4. G6, black goes for bishop g7 later, okay. Rook d1. Knight goes back to f6, okay. And now white played the move d5. That's, I think, is an interesting decision. And he says, now the position gets a typical King's Indian structure. White does not want to allow e takes d4 and advances the pawn. So he more or less describes what's going on. It's not an evaluation. And this is something that's pretty typical, that they often in those older books, they would just describe what's going on, but they would not actually evaluate the position. So if we do that, if you evaluate the position, I think it should be pretty clear that white must be better. White has a pretty strong space advantage, and white also doesn't have to fear much counterplay by black, because he's essentially playing a King's Indian with a couple of tempi down. Yeah, he played bishop e7, back to f8, rook e8. The rook is wrong on e8, for example, for the f5 push. So black's only counterplay here would be f5, and it takes ages to get there. Yeah, the next move is also not annotated, and it's just a bad move. Black now plays c5. And this is pretty obvious bad move. Black now closes the position completely and pretty much says, okay, I will not have any counterplay ever. Yeah, if black instead, and this is what we were thinking when we looked at the game, black should probably be a bit more flexible here in the center, seeing that white is not really threatening to take on c6. You could play something like a5 or maybe a6, something like that, keep the tension a little bit, and maybe on a good day you can take on d5 and play b5, bishop b7 for a little bit of counterplay. It's already very difficult, this position, because you don't really have any compensation for your lack of space. But c5 is not annotated at all. Now, after c5, the next couple of moves are not annotated. And I mean, you could do that for sure, because some of the maneuvers are a little bit mysterious. Knight h4, yeah, you can do that. Oftentimes this is played in such a structure to prevent f5 altogether, but here black is not nearly threatening this at all. I mean, it takes ages for black to threaten that. So it's not quite clear that the bishop belongs there. In fact, we see all these moves here, and they are a little bit mysterious, yeah, sometimes. Rook f8, black is ultimately preparing f5. Knight e2, bishop d7, bishop c3, knight e8. Ultimately, f5 is what black wants to do. And we're going to join the annotated bishop f5. It's a bit odd, yeah, bishop c3, bishop a5. All this is not annotated at all. Rook e1. Okay, back to d2. Queen back to d8. Bishop f6. Okay, the knight goes back. Bishop to e7. Bishop h6. Knight g7. Now, and now Bronstein commentates Kotov, that is black, right? Kotov is black. Has used the last 10 moves more favorably and has positioned his forces very harmoniously. Yeah, that kind of indicates to me that Bronstein thinks black has a good position, and I don't know, black's position is not good. It's absolutely not good. I mean, if we check what happened in the game, and again, this is not annotated, h4 was played. Black played now f5. Takes, knight c3. And I just want to get to this position. And this is the craziest part of this whole annotation. Now, in this position, just have a look at this the situation here. White still has an advantage in space. With f5, black has weakened his position more than anything else. And he has absolutely no counterplay. I mean, black has no counterplay here. And if white plays just something normal, I mean, and there are a couple of moves that you could play, but the most normal move here would be a standard f4 and putting pressure on black's pawns here. For example, after e4, you can play knight e3 and you can prepare g4. And this position is just for a human eye. You don't need a computer. It's just better for white. And if you switch on the engine, it will be pretty radical. I didn't expect that. It was clear to me when I looked at this with my student that white is pretty substantially better. I mean, of course he is. But if you switch on the engine, it's like +2. It's just devastating. And the engine even likes g4 more, which is not a very standard way to do it. Yeah, we were more thinking about f4 in this position, again without a computer. And also this is a huge advantage. You have to see that in a position like that, white will play g4, and this can be absolutely devastating. If you check this, the position now opens up in white's favor. This, of course, takes, you have to look at this a little bit, but it is fairly clear that white is much better here, much better. You have g4 as well as an idea. An important point is that black can never snatch this here. If you look at this, queen gets trapped. It's a nice little point. But it's of course white is better. And you can absolutely not state in this position that black has maneuvered more successfully. Black's position is terrible. I mean, the computer gives all kinds of things that are great for white, but even if you just do nothing with white, you're much better, because black has only one play here, it's f5, and that weakens. So white is clearly for choice here, clearly. And now we get to this position here when white is clearly better, and now white plays the unbelievably bad move bishop takes g7. I mean, I don't get this at all. Bishop takes g7, I mean, what? You give up the most important bishop that you have on h6 against that miserable knight? For what reason? This is just a really bad move for somebody who's playing in a candidates tournament. I mean, this is not really, this is a move that, I don't know, it's just terrible. It makes absolutely no sense. And this move gives away all the advantage, like everything. And it's not mentioned. It's just like, just a move like, no annotation, no question mark, no text, nothing. And it's an obviously terrible move. So sometimes I read a review of the book just before I made the video, and they said the book would be great also because it would address a large range of playing strength. Like it would explain some key points also to not so strong players. Yeah, but please, bishop takes g7 is totally, it's just terrible, and you have to mention that. I mean, and it's obvious also to a player like Bronstein that is terrible move. Why isn't it annotated? I don't get this. So this is just weird. And then we continue a little bit till this move, a4, e4, and he says yeah, this is a good idea to activate the knight. This annotation I'm fine with. The next one is kind of interesting. So we have knight f4, rook e8, and here knight takes e6 was played. So black is offering the exchange and white is taking it. Here white actually misses a tactical shot that Bronstein also misses. This is something that my student and I also missed. White can simply take on e4 and is better here. And if you look at this more deeper with the engine, this will go up. It's just a tactical strike. You just give up the knight first and then win the exchange. And the resulting position is pretty clearly better for white. This was also missed in the annotation. And this is the kind of thing that I always think, okay, that can happen. You don't have the engine at the time, they didn't have it, and you can just miss a move like knight takes e4. It happens. But what I don't get is such an obvious strategic mistake as bishop takes g7. You have to annotate. You cannot just let it stand there. This changes the game completely. If white plays something good here, we will just wipe out black, and after bishop g7, black is better. Or, I mean, the computer doesn't even say black is better, but it's just so bad to do it. So here there's a tactical mistake, which again I completely understand that this is made. And after that, actually, the annotation is fine. We didn't really have any objection to this. Yeah, it's a pretty interesting game, and I don't want to look at this in much depth. I just want to point out one interesting moment that's really, really strong play by black here in this position after queen e3. Here, black played a very nice move, king to g6. You get there a little bit by elimination, but it's very nice. White is threatening this and threatening the bishop, and black can just simply play king g6 because after queen takes h7, there is the mate here. Yeah, it's very nice. It's a very aesthetic way to play. And yeah, in the game, black ultimately won in the ending. And there the annotation is fine. We didn't find any mistake there. So the thing that I don't get is that the obvious strategic mistakes are not annotated. I'm not saying, yeah, you should see all the tactics. This is, of course, not possible. But bishop takes g7, please. Or getting the knight to b6, which is completely anti-positional. That has to be annotated. And it's actually instructive. It's really instructive. And it's not there. And I'm completely sure, like if you take any modern book on strategy or annotated games, they would have those moves annotated. Absolutely 100%. Simply, of course, the engine would point them out. This would be, of course, a huge help. But even just a human player looking at them, a modern grandmaster, or in my case, an IM, would spot those. So let's look at a third game. And this is now basically a live experiment. I'm just going to randomly select a game. I have a random number generator, and I will generate a round number 2. So I'm going to pick a game from round 2, ideally one that I don't know, because then it would be a little bit, I just want to have a fresh look at a game that I don't know that is annotated. So, okay, this is not so great. Geller-Oewe is a very famous game. And there. Yeah, this is the thing sometimes. The games are all very famous. This one I don't know. Bronstein Najdorf. Okay, let's do this. I'm going to get this. The other two games in round 2 are so famous that is kind of makes no sense if I look at them, because I just know the games and I know what's going on there. So Bronstein-Oewe from round 2. Is that round 2? I guess, right? No, that's not it. Bronstein Najdorf. I'm sorry. Sorry for this. A little bit of a mess here. So now let's have a look at this. A chapter. And now I'm just going to look at this without the engine and check the annotations. Yeah. So we have A King's Indian. Yeah, this is of course all. These are the early days of the King's Indian. That's all pioneering work. I have a coffee actually here. So we have got e4, d6, bishop g5, played by Bronstein. Yeah, this is a little bit rare, this line. And it's not really mentioned much. It's not much mentioned here. Yeah, bishop g5 is not played much nowadays because h6, your bishop either gets sidelined on h4, which is undesirable, or bishop e3 gets hit by knight g4. Yeah, it's a bit of a rare line, but okay, this is not the point. We have c5 for in a Benoni structure, and knight a6. So what does Bronstein say? The annotation is actually pretty brief here, but okay, we'll see. He says only 6 moves have been played, but there are already many things happened in that time. White played bishop g5, and this provoked black to play with c5. Yeah, maybe. After d5, black didn't have the natural square c6 for the knight, and therefore Naidov goes for the knight to c7 route in order to play a6 b5 later. This costs a lot of time, and the result does not really seem too great compared to the effort spent. The knight on c7 is passive and doesn't do all that much. Ultimately, it almost costs black the game. Okay, this is a really good annotation. Yeah, the knight, this is actually often seen, the knight coming to c7, trying to prepare b5, and I agree, quite often this is not actually that fantastic. You would probably nowadays, if you are in this position, just castle, and now it's not clear what white is doing, probably queen d2, and black probably goes e6 for a modern Benoni transposition, or maybe in some cases you can play b5 for Banco style play. e6 is the most normal stuff. Okay, knight a6. And white now, this is not annotated, played bishop d3. Yep. Knight c7. Knight e2 now played. I would probably prefer knight f3 setups, but this is not a bad move, of course. a6, a4. Rook b8. Yeah. Castles, castles. Queen c2, bishop d7. And white now plays h3. h3 and allows b5. So white is basically saying, he doesn't annotate this at all. b5. And now f4. And now he says, black's piece placement was supporting b5. True. White gets more space, which is not compensated by the b5 pawn. Black is very cramped, and we should, for example, compare the rook on f8 with the rook on f1. Yeah, that's a good annotation. The rook on f1 is potentially stronger, of course, than the f8 rook. If you see f4, white might play f5, he might play e5. In all those cases, the rook is active. Still, I wonder why isn't a5 also good? It's more of a standard way to do this. So after, let's say, b5, we take, rook takes, and we would probably successfully claim that white is better here as well. One thing is here, however, this is not ideal. A position like that would be really good if we would have b3, bishop c2, covering b3 very safely, and then continue on the king side. It's probably worth mentioning that a5 is a good alternative. However, after b5, white is keeping the tension, and now it seems that black doesn't really have anything great available. On the other hand, yeah, white is probably better in both cases. But you could argue, I mean, if black is taking this now, which he didn't do that, right? No, he played knight e8. Black takes this. Is not, well, isn't that a worse version of the line before? Like, if I have to take now, I guess. Yeah, rook b4. I don't think e5 or something works immediately. So takes here. Isn't that a worse version of this? Probably, yeah. Probably it is. Man, there's no tactic, right? Let me check this. Because here b2 is slightly vulnerable. Yeah, you have to. I mean, I'm just checking this. There's no tactics, right? SB2, always something happening on b2. No, don't think so. I still think I would prefer a5 to h3. Ultimately, okay, knight e8. I'm not sure if this is a good idea. Knight e8, and now white takes on b5 and goes rook a7. Yeah, white's position looks pretty good. Takes. Rook a8. He says black cannot allow rook f to a1, and white is now trading the only active black piece. That's true. Yeah, this position must be pretty good for white, huh? I guess. We didn't really learn what black's mistake was. Maybe knight a6 is what the author is implicating, that this whole plan is bad. Yeah, it's probably not great. Queen b3. Okay. And now f6. Black is not. Black cannot keep the queen forever to cover e7, and therefore he's going to. He's playing this kind of. Yeah, he says it's a tough decision to play f6, which is a nice way to put it. Yeah, if you have to play f6, things are really not going your way. So bishop h4, queen b6, and queen a3. Wow. The most amazing thing is that this is ending in a draw. Interesting. It looks completely terrible for black. Okay, queen a3, knight c7 b3, and now knight c7 b5. Okay. Look here, and now f5. It's a pretty long annotation. He says the white's advantage, which is kind of piling up, as he says, have become pretty enormous. And white now tries to, with f5, to improve his position decisively. Now knight f4 is a threat. I don't understand the annotation. He mentioned that white has the idea bishop e1 as well. Okay. And that rook a1 was also an interesting move. Yeah, f5 is not so easy to play, because you, of course, have many upsides of this move, but On the other hand, you also give black this diagonal. A tough one. He also mentioned rook a1 as f5, e5 doesn't work. Yeah, so he mentioned this one, rook a1, f5, e5. Yeah, the point is that here you probably have d6 check, right? Yeah, d6 check. Six check. Why? What happens here if I take? Probably can take this one, right? Yeah, okay, that should win. He only has king h8, de6. Yeah, okay. Rook a1 looks like a strong move, of course. This feels actually that like f5 is not really necessary. If you play rook a1, queen a7 or something like that, or queen a5, you should be really tremendously better. Actually, probably many things are good here for white. Yeah, that's a tough call. I mean, I don't want to look at this super deep. f5. Yeah. It's probably still good. So bishop h6 takes and e5. So white is going for the throat. Interesting. So black has taken. de, queen d3. Yeah, he says white now plans knight c3, rook b1, and trying to enter on the queen side. This is all possible because the knight is so bad on a8. Yeah, that's definitely true. King h7, knight c3, queen b3. Queen b3? Okay. He said he just goes back and says instead of queen d3, bishop f2 was stronger. Bishop f2, rook c8, queen d3, king g7, h4. That looks bad. Yeah, idea being h5 and then knight g3 to get on the light squares. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that is indeed much better. Okay, so queen b3. And now he says, yeah, now black has the chance to trade queens, which helps the defense. Yeah, that's probably true. Rook b1, e4. And he says, white, of course, does not take the pawn, allowing the black knight to escape. Isn't this position still terrible for black? Yeah, it looks really bad. What? This is really weird. Now rook b8. And after the rook trade, he says, now white's advantage is disappearing almost completely. It was better to take on e7. But all in all, now he goes back. This is really odd. And he says, instead of king f3, this is annotated on move 34, but now he goes back. He says, instead of king f3, white should have played this move to get rid of the bishop. Okay, that makes sense. that position is so terrible for black. Kind of curious what the engine gives here. It looks completely lost, actually. Have you imagined this? This is never moving. This is absolutely never moving. Yeah, you can play knight b5 shortly. I mean, okay, you have to stop the pawn, of course. But then knight b5, it never moves. Just never moves. Okay, in the game, rook b8. And now he says rook takes e7 was better. And after this, it's supposed to be equal. Knight a4. If you take on c5, at the end c4 will fall. So if you take here, he doesn't give anything anymore. Like this loses c4. So king e3, knight c7. And here, draw was agreed. Yeah, that's probably okay. Yeah. So this annotation is quite a bit better than the ones before. I think probably if you switch on the engine, it will find many improvements. But again, this is not my point. Here, I think he clearly points out some key moments, like for example, that here bishop g3 was strong. But okay, we switch on the thing and see what the engine has to say about it. So let's go here and see. Yeah, so here a5 would be my preference quite clearly, which is also mentioned by the comp. Yeah, now it takes a while, but then it agrees. +1 is with a5, and h3 is also liked. So yeah, I wasn't quite sure. I think I would have played a5, but this position also looks good. f4, and here I thought maybe b takes a4 would be better. Knight e8 is an odd move. This is probably the same thing as before. Yeah, it's just better, like with the +1 evaluation. Okay, f4, knight e8. Now we got this, and rook a7. Rook a8. 8 on a8. This is great. Yeah, and now this f6 move. Yeah, I agree. This is a very tough decision, but maybe black doesn't really have much better. I mean, how are you ever going to move the queen? It's really true. So f6, bishop h4, queen b6, queen a3, knight c7, b3, and knight b5. Yeah, so the computer is actually not disliking black's position all that much. So knight takes, bishop takes, and now f5. Yeah, unsure. I really think this, I would have probably played rook a1, and this is preferred by the comp. I'm not such a clear fan of f5, honestly. So bishop h6, which is disliked. Computer just wants to play knight c7 and get this back into the game. Yeah, makes sense. The knight is really not good on a8. This is probably the problem with this is probably exactly the game. Yeah, e5 looks strong. That's a nice move. Takes, d takes, and he said bishop f2 was stronger, which is not exactly what the engine is giving, but it's getting there. Yeah, it's now it's a favorable, the favorite move of the comp. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah, bishop f2, queen d3, king h7, knight c3, and now knight c7 is better than queen b3, which is not really surprising. The knight should really move away. Yeah, knight c7 now is better than queen b3. And now we get to this position. Yeah, rook b7. So ultimately, then this annotation is a little bit strange, because he says black's defense is eased by the queen trade, which is not really true, I think. But okay, king g8. Here bishop f4 is favored. Yeah, that makes quite a bit of sense if you just see, I mean, okay, this is hanging with a check, therefore a difficult decision. but it's probably more important to get this active. If you look at the game after king g8, we had this, and now bishop g3 is, as pointed out by Bronstein, probably a winner. This position is just so terrible. White is just getting closer to the pawn and has knight b5. This is just awful, really awful. Yeah, and now here, what I wondered was if white is not still able to pose more problems here. He doesn't really annotate this anymore. This knight a4. Yeah, if the king, I mean, this should still be a bit better because white has the much better pawn structure. It's probably not going to be anything decisive like this. Let's say this, and what the engine gives here, this is kind of a fortress, but white is of course still able to pose problems. This would be a nightmare against a strong technical player. Bishop f2 comes here. It's always tying black's defenses to c5. Still not much fun. So we randomly picked this game, and this annotation is quite a bit better than the two that I've seen before. And this is a little bit yeah, it's actually a little bit a bit of a positive note, because I couldn't really think that every single game is annotated in that bad fashion as the first two. But what I'm getting at is that if you have those older books, they have instructional value, but they also have a couple of pretty weird annotations, not pointing out some of the, I think, important factors. So compared to modern books, they are, if you take a modern book on strategy, they are just a lot better. Yeah, they are better researched normally, and the computer just helps tremendously in pointing out resources and finding key moments of the games. For example, if you take if you look at a strategy book, if you take a modern book, for example, by Boris Gelfand, strategic decision making in chess, or it's positional, I think, positional decision making in chess. This is like miles better, simply because of it's much more precise, and also the key points, key decisions, they are more clearly explained. So those books are still having some value, but take it with a grain of salt, some of those evaluations. We nowadays know some things a little bit better, and the technology helps to show the mistakes better and the key moments of the games. If you have this book, Zuerich 53, you might have it. It's a very well known book. It's not a bad thing to go through it and check some of those games, because the games are really very, very interesting. And then maybe do it a little bit like I did, with a bit more time. I didn't want to look at this now for 2 hours. If you have time, check the annotations, make up your own mind what you think about them, what you think could be interesting, and at the end, do it this like I did. Check it with the computer. It will give you even a new perspective, and this is a good way, to learn about all parts of chess. And it's quite interesting. It has a little bit of a detective flair to it. Trying to find out what did he get right, what didn't he get right. At the end, we will just be we have learned something at the end. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll be back tomorrow, probably with some more blitz chess if I manage. Tomorrow will be very busy. Thanks a lot for watching.